Hello, church family. Joshua here. It's Saturday around noontime for me. It's cloudy outside, but it's still a nice day. Hope that you're doing well. I hope that you're staying safe, especially with all of the Christmas gatherings that we've had here recently. I'm wondering if you can do something for me. I'm wondering if you could remember a family that is very closely tied with Morgan and I. Her parents have some family friends called the McQuillans. That's their name. And they recently lost their son. So if you could, this week, keep those people in your prayers for us. We would really appreciate it. We're going to be in Ecclesiastes today. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, one of my most favorite passages in Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And I'm going to read verses 1 through 8 to start off with. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time for love, a time for hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. God's people, during this time that Ecclesiastes is written, they thought about time a little bit differently than what we do. We see time in chronological order, going year by year, 2020, 2021, 2022, and we just have this chronological mindset. We're much more focused on time. What time is it? How much time am I losing? What am I spending my time on? We're very time oriented, which puts us in this chronological mindset. The people of this time saw time differently. They saw it as seasons, or almost as a circle. A time for being young or middle-aged and old and finally passing away. And time for them was just this ever-revolving door. There's a time to be on a high in life, and then there's a time to be on a low. There's a time to be happy, there's a time to be sad. And instead of it being like, for us, I was happy for this amount of time, and then something happened, and then I'm sad for this amount of time. Instead of them looking at it in blocks like that, they just saw it as part of life, and how life goes in a circle, and how we have ups and downs and mountains and valleys in our lifetime. And that's how they thought about time. So let's look at these verses again, knowing that. For everything there's a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted. Verse 3. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. Now using these words, a time to kill and a time to heal, as we know, God's people in the Old Testament, a time to kill is very literal sometimes, as in they were in wars and they killed lots of people and were killed and enslaved themselves, and how this is a very literal term for them. For us, it's not so much a literal term. I hope to never kill someone in my lifetime, and I hope that nobody kills me either, and it will be a rarity if someone does choose to kill me. But for us, I think of relationships in this verse: a time to kill and a time to heal, time to break down, and a time to build up. And how there are some relationships in my life that probably should be killed off. People that are toxic, people that, not because they're, I've tried and tried to help them or to see who Jesus is, and they don't want to see who he is. And they don't want to get better. So they're bringing me down instead. So those relationships I probably need to let go of. On the other hand, there are some times where I have relationships that I need to heal those relationships. Something has happened, and instead of letting those go, I need to try to do everything that I can to heal and mend that relationship. And the same thing with the second part of that verse: a time to break down and a time to build up. Verse 4: a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. I think of the McQuillans, those people that I ask you to remember in prayer, and how they had no control over their son passing away. Their son is in his upper 20s, and he has a daughter who is 2 or 3 years old. And how for them, and the fact that they've lost their son and now their granddaughter doesn't have a father, this is a time in their life where they're going to weep and they're going to mourn. And there's nothing they can do to control that. And when we're in this revolving door of life, there's so many things that are out of our control. Verse 5: a time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. I'm not, this verse, to me, it's like, all right, a time to throw things away, and time to gather things together, a time to embrace something, and a time to not embrace. And I think about how this verse has not meant that much to me until this past year, and the fact that we haven't been able to gather together. We haven't been able to embrace one another physically as we have done in the past. And how I'm hoping this time of not being able to embrace one another is on the upswing, in a time where we can. Instead of casting away, we can gather up. Instead of refraining from embracing, that we can take this year and take this time to embrace each other again. That's what I'm hoping for, at least. Verse 6: a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. This passage shows us that life, it's an ever-moving thing, and that we're coming up emotionally. We're feeling better about ourselves, or feeling better where life is, and that might be because of a job or where our family is. Or life might be coming down because of something that has happened in our family, or someone's been sick, or someone's passed away, or we've lost a job. But the good thing about life is it never stays where it's going. Things happen and things change. Things get better and things get worse, but things change all the time. I've been thinking about this past year and how if I could go back a year from now to January, I couldn't imagine the changes that would happen over this past year. I never would have thought that I would have had to wear a mask everywhere I go, or that I would have to quarantine if I come in contact with someone who is sick, or that there would be this virus come around that would kill thousands of people. I just never would have thought of that. I never would have thought that church services around the world shut down for weeks and for months. Wouldn't have thought that Bible classes would have been stopped for months and months for some people. But it did. And something interesting that I think we do as Americans is we do this thing called, or we have these things called New Year's resolutions, and how we look at the past year and we look at things that maybe didn't go well or we didn't discipline ourselves in, and we say, hey, I'm going to discipline myself in this, or I'm going to get better in this. And a lot of times it's physical things, like I'm going to lose this much weight, or I'm going to make this much money, or I'm going to quit this habit, or I'm going to get better at a certain skill, or do some projects around the house. We have all of these things that we want to do within the next year. Even I have a lot of physical resolutions, physical things I want to get better at. How many spiritual New Year's resolutions do we have? Do we want to become better students of God, to know Him better? Do we want to have a better relationship with Him, to talk to Him more? Do we want to be better servants or better evangelists? And every year I have my list of physical things and spiritual things. But it always seems like I get the physical things done more efficiently, or I actually get those things done more than what I do spiritually. So I want you to think of where you were a year ago in January. And I want you to think of the New Year's resolutions that you had then. Did you even have any spiritual resolutions? Did you want to get better spiritually? If not, I hope that you put some of those in your list this year. If you did, if you had resolutions to whatever, whether it's serving or studying or talking to God, becoming connected with His people more, how did that turn out this past year? How did it go? How did it go in comparison to your physical resolutions, whether it's completing projects around the house or quitting a habit or becoming a better person? How did those stack up between each other? For me, like I said, the physical, I got a lot of those things done, and I left the spiritual things on the back burner a little bit. Think about how you need to get better spiritually. And think about coming back to Ecclesiastes chapter 3. We've all had a season of life this past year that's been different than anything we've ever we've ever experienced. What is the season going to be like in 2021 for you and for me? There are things that we cannot control, like death or sickness. But there are some things that we can in our diligence to be better Christians. So, my challenge for you this week is to look at yourself as I will look at myself and ask, what season of life am I in right now? Physically speaking. Is work going good? Is my relationship with my family going good? Or is it those things going bad? Where am I at? Then, I want us all to ask ourselves, where are we spiritually? What season of life are we in spiritually? Are we on a high? Has something happened to where we're high on Jesus right now? Or are we in a low spot? Then, I know I've got several challenges this week. Then, I want us to look at our opportunity that we have in this moment to say, you know what? I've been in a spiritual low, but I don't want to be anymore. I don't want to be far from God. I don't want to feel far from His presence. So this year, I'm going to try to work on being closer to God, or whatever that is for you, whether it's being closer to God or serving His people, evangelizing to other people, whatever it is. Make this season of 2021 an upswing in your spiritual life, and an upswing in your relationship with God. I thank you for listening today. I thank you for choosing to put God first. I thank you for taking the time out of your day, because a lot of people, unfortunately, they don't do that. But I'm thankful that you did. If you need anything, please let me know, or Rodney or Marie or the elders. We love you and we miss you.